The decision to go ghost hunting in Hollow's End Hospital had been a joke, something we laughed about. But I still remember the smell of stale air, the cold bite of fear I tried to hide as we slipped through a broken window on Halloween night. The place had been shut down for decades, left to rot and decay. The locals whispered stories of hauntings, of shadows seen in empty rooms, of lights flickering with no source. We were a small group: Sam, Emily, Jake, and me. I carried the flashlight, though the beam did little to cut through the thick darkness. Every step echoed through the empty hallways, our breaths barely audible over the eerie silence. It felt like the walls themselves were watching us, remembering. As we crept deeper, Jake joked about summoning ghosts. "Let's see if any of these guys still want some company," he laughed. But his voice seemed too loud, too harsh in the dark. We should have turned back right then. I think about that a lot, how easy it would have been to leave. But something kept us moving forward. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe just the thrill. We found ourselves in a patient ward, a long stretch of empty rooms with flickering light fixtures hanging above. The air felt heavier there, thicker, like it was pressing down on us. I swear I could almost hear whispers, faint and fleeting, just at the edge of my hearing. Emily shivered. "Does anyone else feel that?" she asked. "Like someone's watching?" Her words hit us hard, and we fell silent, suddenly all too aware of our surroundings. Shadows shifted at the edge of my vision, moving even when I stood still. The first sign that something was truly wrong came when Sam's face went blank, his eyes vacant, as if he'd slipped into a trance. We called his name, tried shaking him, but he just stood there, staring into the void. And then, without warning, he began to mumble. "They left me here," he whispered, voice hollow, a stranger's voice in Sam's mouth. "They let me die alone." He stumbled forward, reaching for an empty bed, his face twisted in anguish. "Help me," he pleaded, his voice cracking. We grabbed him, shook him until he snapped out of it. Sam looked at us, confused and scared, like he didn't know where he was. What happened?" he stammered. None of us could answer him. We were too shaken by the way he'd looked, the way he'd spoken, as if he were someone else. Still, we pressed on, though every instinct screamed at me to run. We tried to laugh it off, to pretend it was all just a joke, but deep down, we knew something was wrong. It wasn't long before it happened again, this time to Emily. One moment she was fine, laughing nervously, the next, her face changed, and she started shaking. "They're coming for me," she cried, eyes wide with terror. "I didn't mean to hurt them. I didn't, please." She fell to her knees, clutching her head, as if battling something we couldn't see. We stood there, helpless, watching as she trembled and wept, reliving some nightmare that wasn't hers. It felt like the walls were closing in, like the building itself was alive, feeding on our fear. Jake and I exchanged a look, one that said what we were both thinking: this wasn't just a game anymore. When Emily finally came to, she looked as if she'd aged years in those few minutes. She didn't say a word, just stared at the floor, hollow and defeated. We were scared to leave, scared to stay, trapped between the fear of the unknown and the terror of whatever was possessing us. Then it was Jake's turn. His laughter died mid-sentence, and he went silent, his face twisted in rage. "They deserve it," he growled, fists clenched. "All of them. I warned them." He slammed his hand against the wall, blood trickling from his knuckles as he muttered about revenge, about punishments that never ended. I was frozen, watching my friends unravel one by one, becoming something I didn't recognize. Jake's face contorted in fury, his eyes blank, as if some dark force was using him as a puppet. I couldn't help but wonder, what if it was my turn next? What would I become? It was then I realized that the spirits here didn't just haunt, they possessed, pulled us into their nightmares, made us live out their worst memories. The hospital wasn't just abandoned. It was a tomb, holding souls that could not rest. The final straw came when Sam screamed, a blood-curdling sound that echoed down the hallways. We turned, but his eyes were rolled back, his hands clawing at his own skin. "No! Please! I don't want to die," he shrieked, reliving some unspeakable horror as if it were real. I grabbed his shoulders, shaking him as he writhed in my grip. "Sam! Wake up!" I yelled, but it was useless. Whatever had him was too strong, too deep. His screams pierced through me, chilling my blood, but all I could do was hold him, helpless. When he finally went silent, he collapsed to the floor, eyes wide with terror, staring at something none of us could see. "They're here," he whispered, barely audible. "They want us to suffer as they did." We knew then that we had to leave, but the building had other plans. Doors that had been open were suddenly locked, hallways twisted, leading us back to the places we'd just left. It was like the hospital was shifting, trapping us in its web, refusing to let us go. I clutched the flashlight tighter, fighting the pull. But then, Emily's voice broke the silence. "Do you feel that?" she whispered. They're in my head." Her eyes were empty, her expression slack, as if someone else was staring out from within her. I couldn't take it anymore. I ran, the others close behind, our footsteps pounding through the darkness. I heard voices all around us, screaming, crying, whispering in words I couldn't understand. The walls seemed to pulse, and shadows slithered across the floors, reaching for us. We finally found the window we'd come through, the one way out. I didn't wait. I scrambled through, pulling the others after me, desperate to escape the grip of that cursed place. But as we staggered into the night, I felt a chill settle over me, one I couldn't shake. Back at home, we tried to forget, tried to move on. But each Halloween, I can feel that place calling me back, a whisper at the edge of my thoughts. Sometimes, I wake up in the night and see shadows moving, hear faint screams, feel cold hands brushing against my skin. I don't know if we ever really left that hospital, or if some part of us stayed behind, forever haunted by the souls we disturbed. And every year, as Halloween approaches, I feel that pull, that creeping dread that tells me one day, I'll go back. And this time, I might never leave.